problem is it comes across like a smart decision, but it's from scarcity. It's a scarcity mindset. You think you're saving money, but you're actually renting your own failure. They own your growth, you're just along for the ride basically. You won't scale what you don't control. Most realtors don't need more leads, they need better leverage. I do run a paid lead service, but here's why I'm still telling you this. Stop renting your pipelines, people. Start building your empire. Pay after closing feels safe until it actually kills your business. So most agents jump into pay after closing deals because they're scared of risk, right? Like it feels smart because there's no upfront cost, there's no stress. You only pay if you get paid. It sounds simple enough, right? But here's the truth. Safety is expensive when it's based on fear. So it's like saying, I won't invest in my car. I'll just Uber until it breaks even. You're not building anything. You're just avoiding responsibility. It just doesn't end well. So the thing is with pay after closing, it feels like freedom. It's fear of commitment. That's what it boils down to, and it's disguised as strategy. And in today's video, I'm going to quickly digest exactly why pay after closing companies kill growth and explaining why if you are relying on these companies, you're either going to go backwards in RE, you're never going to get out of part-time as RE, or you might end up not being an RE at all if you heavily rely on them. But to give you a general idea of who I am, my name is Dylan Kirk. I'm the CEO and founder of Estato. And we basically pride ourselves on making sure we build quality paid advertising systems for real estate agents. Hyper focusing on quality instead of quantity, because we realize 100 leads and 0 conversions is 0 leads because they didn't convert. So that's what we focus on and make sure that we're heading in that direction and making sure that real estate agents have systems that they can use and they're not relying on anyone. That's the whole aim. So why pay after closing companies essentially kill your growth? And there's a good reason for this. So like I said, you're disguising fear of commitment as a strategy, right? Because that's essentially what pay after closing is. It's the fastest way to stay broke. You're not investing anything up front, but who's actually running your business? You or them? And there's a good chance that if you're heavily relying on these people, they're running your business for you. They entirely determine if your business is going to succeed or if it's going to fail. The reason why a lot of realtors fall for it is that there's no upfront cost, it's guaranteed, so only pays if it works, right? And there's no risk, or so it seems. The problem is it comes across like a smart decision, but it's from scarcity. It's a scarcity mindset that you haven't got the funds to actually rely on a steady flow of income. So you're putting your wings to the wind, if that makes sense. Like you're just depending on these companies actually giving you money, which doesn't really work out, and there's never been a payment model that's really successfully done it. And there's a reason why a lot of pay after closing companies are actually going bankrupt, because the model doesn't work anymore. It's a model that's broken. And this perfectly highlights, especially in this video, why your real estate business is stuck, and it's probably because you're depending on this sort of area here with fear and scarcity. So part of that video is about mindset. Highly recommend watching it. So the price you actually pay in RE, and this is more of the hidden cost territory. So with pay after closing, the biggest depender on it is that you think you're saving money, but you're actually renting your own failure. And what I mean by that is when you don't pay up front, you're not the customer. You're the inventory. There's zero incentive to actually help the real estate agent individually, and you get what essentially is what left over. So the price you actually pay is lower quality leads, so there's no skin in the game, slower delivery time, so low incentive to actually prioritize you. Remember, they are depending on a numbers game. They're not focused on quality at all. And what that happens is that you get as many of these as possible. Like I said, 100 leads and 0 conversions. That's probably about right for pay after closing company numbers. So they're cookie cutter as well. So cookie cutter marketing, you're just a number. There's no incentive, again, to help you individually. There's no ownership of systems, assets, or data. So you have no control over it. You have no overlook for it. And essentially what happens is, if they fail, you fail. So it boils down as well to not having control over your own brand or messaging. This is the way to describe, a lot of the big pay after closing companies, is that it's a very large shop window with a lot of products and a lot of shopkeepers fighting for that same shop window. You're a voice out of 1,000. There's no real, it's too saturated to actually have anything sustainable. And even if it did work, which a lot of the times it doesn't work, you've then got to depend on, when's the next one coming in? When's the next one coming in? If you want to scale and rely on pay after closing only, that's impossible. That can't be done. So you're in two boats. If you want to scale, do not go to pay after closing companies. If you just want like a couple $1,000, every year or so, then yeah, pay after closing. but you're going to waste a lot of time for it, and you can't really sustainably have another job while that's going on. So, and the problem is you're renting growth, and it stops the second they do. So it really doesn't work there. And on top of that, renting unpredictable growth never ever works in business. It's a big no, because you get what's left over, right? You get low intent leads, which never works. You get slower fulfillment because it's that longer process, because they're cold. You have to introduce who they are. Turns out they're actually not bothered to work with you. They just look for the cheapest deal. And then number 3, you've got no real strategy. It's just whatever pre-built template they throw at you and just hope you close, basically. There's no support for it, so they just leave you to the wind, basically. Just think about it like this. If they're working with 50 agents, right, are they splitting the best leads 50 ways? No. They're prioritizing the whales, and you're just filler. Like, you're not a priority for them. The worst part of it, all of it is that you don't own anything. There's no data, like I said, there's no brand, and there's no process. You're not building a business, you're feeding theirs, which, again, supports this model and why, ultimately, a lot of them go bankrupt and it doesn't work out. So the way I often describe it is that basically because they own your growth, you're just along for the ride, basically. The scariest part is with a pay after closing company, if you're with them for like 2 years and still have no real growth to show for it, that's actually pretty consistent. Because the moment you stop paying these leads, if they say, hey, pay me like $400 up front and do the rest at closing, or maybe pay nothing up front and do everything at closing. Like for some businesses, they require a small setup fee as well, and then doing a massive commission, which is horrible. That is the worst business model I've ever heard of, because the moment the leads stop, the deals stop. And that is when momentum in your business dies and you're back to square one. Like the moment you stop paying them, everything collapses, and it's something that doesn't work. You don't know how the ads work, so you have no way of actually tracking it. You don't have the data, so you don't know what works in the first place or how often it did work, and you don't control the pipeline. You just get given whatever leads they throw at you, and like I said, the whales get the good leads, you get the awful leads because they're paying more up front, so it doesn't really work out. And the way I describe it is it's like leasing the gym for 2 years, and when you cancel the membership, you lose all the muscle, right? Like, it's a horrible, horrible model that doesn't work for a lot of agents. If you're part-time and you don't really care about scaling, it could be an option, but the problem is you're still paying a hefty amount and losing a hefty amount in the process, especially your time. So, like I said, there's no feedback loops or testing, there's no reinvestments, there's no compound growth. There's no okay, I made $5,000, I'm just going to put $5,000 back into the business or back into the marketing. Doesn't work because you didn't have the system in the first place. You're just giving them back, money for essentially nothing. And it's that dependency trap as well. You're stuck in their model. You don't have control over it. And you can't scale or hire because you don't control the process. If you don't control the process, you can't put the necessary people in place to actually keep this thing running. Pay after closing companies don't teach you to fish. They feed you scraps. And they depend on you depending on them. And that's why, when I talk to a lot of agents, just going from my personal perspectives, I talk to a lot of agents where they demand pay after closing companies. Like, I want to pay after closing that it's absolutely free, no costs up front, and I want it pay after closing only. The thing is, most of the time, I can easily recommend a company that does that. But the problem is, when I recommend that company has no pipeline, there's absolutely no lead quality, and they don't care about the realtor, they care about the commission. Which, fair's fair in a business, you're caring about money. That's kind of why a lot of people get started. But usually with a business, and in order for it to be sustainable, you need to look out for the customer. With pay after closing, you're not looking out for the customer, you're looking out for yourself only. So that's why it doesn't work. And basically how it feels, well, your business is essentially in stagnation. Like, you won't scale what you don't control. Like, you can't scale a system you don't own, because obviously there's no feedback loops, so there's no optimization, there's no testing, so there's no growth, and there's no clarity or metrics, so there's no strategy. Like, you can't train a team, delegate tasks, or improve that offer because you don't have an offer. You didn't do anything. You're locked into someone else's framework, and you are essentially tied to, you're tied to what they can provide you, and it doesn't work. You just pray it continues to work, and real businesses grow because they build an infrastructure. You're not building anything. Like, when they build an infrastructure and when infrastructures are getting built, they're not subscribing to someone else's infrastructure, right? They're building their own. They're building it so it's independent, so they can go solo. Like, that's the whole purpose. But a lot of realtors get stuck in the trap of like, oh, I've got an extra lead, so I'm not going to continue building. Like, this seems like a pretty good deal. Getting a lead once every 4 months, like, it does not work, and it doesn't make sense why you keep doing that. And what it basically feels like is that you're getting burnt out from chasing low quality leads. You're getting high anxiety from that lack of control. You don't know which direction your business is going to go into. Frustration when results stall and you can't fix it because, it's basically like depending on the market, right? It's that same thing of like, well, I don't know if the market's going up, down, or sideways, right? In that same aspect, you don't know what these pay after closing companies are going to do. So when the results stall, you can't do anything about it. So you just sit there and wait for it to magically fix itself. And also self-doubt, if you're getting a lot of junk leads, and even if they are junk leads and you're fully aware they are junk leads, it still kind of stings when you're not closing them. And you often do think in your head, like, is it me or is the system broken? So, there's a good chance if you're doing pay after closing companies solo, then it could be both. It could be the case that sales need refining, but also at the same time, you're not really getting a good leg up from a broken system. So it doesn't work. And because of that, it's not on you. And I will say this, like, sometimes it can be, but most of the time it's not on you. It's the leash they tied to your income, and it just simply doesn't work. What essentially, this is a year graph, or like a year plus graph of essentially what your growth looks like with a pay after closing company. You get maybe lucky in the first 3 months, you keep going. Oh, you're like eight months in. Maybe you get one there, maybe 2 if you're lucky, and then keep going. Oh, 1 year plus. So in a year, you've gotten 3 deals from pay after closing. Congratulations, you just wasted a year. So it doesn't work. Like, even with a great follow-up system, it could take years for results from building that referral base entirely from PAC. So if your strategy to make it as, cheap as possible is to go, oh, you know what? I'm just going to build a referral network entirely from pay after closing. It's by far the cheapest option. You're absolutely right in that sense. It is the cheapest option, but it's the most expensive option when it comes to your time. If you've got a good 5 years spare, good luck. And also, if you've got 5 years spare, give that to me so I can actually use it effectively. Like, if you're going to sit there and use 5 years on pay after closing, like, I'm sorry, you are wasting your time. Unless you have a very, very good reason for that, which most people don't. Pay after closing doesn't do anything for you, and it really, really doesn't work. So most realtors don't need more leads, they need better leverage. And let's just talk about the emotional weight of this model, right? Perfectly highlighting here, this is what your deals would look like, but this also kind of represents your emotions. So if you assume that this spike is your happiness level, assuming that you're tying your happiness to deals, then yeah, happy, and then for 4, 5, 6 months in the year, you're depressed, you're upset, you're sad because your business isn't growing. Then you get a bit of happiness again, you think, oh, it's a bit of light at the end of the tunnel, you keep going, and oh, there's another one there. So you're in this cycle of just feeling good, feeling bad, but primarily feeling bad. You're chasing these you didn't generate, you're trying to close people you didn't qualify, and you're wasting time on buyers who aren't serious. And at the end of all of it, you might not even get paid. That's the big thing. That's always the thing with real estate, is that you do a lot of work and the chances are you're not going to get paid. But if you haven't got a reliable system in place, then that is, like, that's not a gamble if you're going to get paid or not. That's an absolute, you're not going to get paid because you're relying on non-quality leads. So the chances are all that work you're doing, that could be very effective for the right buyer, for the right seller, right? But the chances are, because you're working with low quality people, there's no real chance they're going to move forward with you. You've done all that work for nothing. But if you have quality leads, the chance of them actually going through is significantly higher, which is why I always recommend system building. And like, I look at this and I hear what a lot of agents say, and it's no wonder you're burned out from it. You're exhausted because you don't feel you're in control of your business. You're reacting to what's happening. You're not actually leading. And this is where a lot of people go wrong. Pay after closing companies, they breed anxiety because you've outsourced the one thing that gives you power: predictable income. And why I'm saying this as a person who actually, runs paid ads for a living, even though I sell these to people, and as you can tell from my from my videos here, like, I do this to a lot of people. Like, I do make a lot of videos based on paid advertising, so it's something I specialize in myself. And it is right. I do run a paid like lead service, but here's why I'm still telling you this. Like, I mean, and you'll probably see this from my company as well, where be like, hey, don't you sell leads? Like, absolutely I do. Yeah, 100%. But we don't sell dependency. Part of the thing with us is that we actually build a system. And that's something I was telling you at the start. We build you a system. It's completely in your hands afterwards. We just want to be able to guide you through it. That's the main thing there. I'm not in the business to make people rely on me. I'm in the business of helping agents actually build systems that they control, right? It's not something that I want to actually, take all these people from pay after closing companies. I want to help people. And that's kind of the main thing. But that's about me. Here's the alternative, is invest to own. So stop renting your pipeline to people, start building your empire, is the way I describe it. So the alternative here is to pay up front. So not to me, not to anyone else, pay up front yourself and build your own system, take control. So own your lead gen system. You can build repeatable, scalable processes. You can test and optimize based on your market. You can learn marketing and sales fundamentals, build confidence, independence, and long-term income. All these videos do a great job of explaining how to get started with it and basically what your next steps are. So this is all free. It's all on my channel. You don't have to pay me anything. It's all there. So just keeping that in mind there. Like, I want to help people, and that's the best way I can really achieve to it. But with this sort of strategy instead, like, maybe it's a bit more of a gamble doing it on yourself, but you learn what works, you keep your data, you can adjust based on real-time feedback, and you can create leverage. The thing all real businesses rely on and run on is leverage. You don't need 500 leads. You don't need a Facebook company saying, oh, we're going to give you 1,000 leads a month. You just need 50 high quality leads with a system that you own. Like, that's the main thing. Like, here's the formula for it. And this is something I should probably mention, is that with short-term discomfort equals long-term freedom. That's the equation there. Like, that's how you break out of the survival mode and move into real growth. But yeah, that's pretty much everything. So let me know about the system here if you've got any questions. It's a bit of smoother Mario board this time, but it really gets chopped out explaining why pay after closing is so crucial. But yeah, that's everything. So see ya.